your boards closer. If I have magnetic clips too, if you want those, just put in the center.
Okay. You know what? I think I'm just gonna go with what we got right now.
No, because you have those on the side. What if they don't get recorded in your video?
Oh, I can show the video and kind of.
Okay, I'll put them here.
That's a good idea. That works.
Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna take a picture of them later anyways.
Yeah, you can move them around.
Sure, thank you. Okay. So this right here is a diagram that we're gonna use. And it looks like I'm gonna have to use 2 of these because they're gonna fall down if not, unfortunately.
I have,
There we go. Thank you. Okay. So, hello class. We've already done our introduction, and obviously we've gone over some of the information that we're going to be talking about. Okay. Thank you for being polite and kind, and I appreciate you guys sitting quietly and listening. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to raise your hand. Mr. Brown would be happy to answer any question that you guys might have. So the lesson today is going to be on comprehension, and what we're working on is we're going to do a read-along. I'm going to be reading a book to you guys. This book here is called The Shark Reef. I think that it's fun to learn English skills and at the same time tie in other subjects. So we're going to be tying in science along with our English lesson. When I was growing up, I had a difficult time sometimes remembering the information in books. And I want to help you guys to be stronger readers and writers. And one good way of doing that is to know how to remember the information that you're reading. So what I wanted to work on today with you guys is this chart here. Can somebody read this word here?
Who, what, when, where, why, how.
Perfect. You guys are good. So how many of you guys have ever known a detective before? Okay. How many of you guys have watched a movie with a detective before? Okay. So a detective is like a police officer who does investigations, right? So what they do is if there's a crime that occurs, they have to figure out what happened. And a large part of their job of how they figure out how things happened is they ask these very same questions right here. They ask the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So hopefully after I read this book to you guys, we're going to be able to go over some of the questions of the who, what, where, when, and why. I also have a couple worksheets for you guys to accomplish. One of them involves answering just a couple of very short questions. Along with that, you guys get to draw a picture. Do you guys have any colored pencils that they can use? That'd be great. Okay. And I will do a brief assessment that's just kind of an exit strategy just to make sure that what Mr. Brown did was worth your time and that you guys actually gained some knowledge out of my lesson plan today. When you guys read a book, do you guys ever go over some of the difficult words that's inside of it? Have you ever read a book and gone, I don't quite know what that means? You have. Okay. So when you read a book, it's always good to kind of scan through your book. And you just open it up and you look through some of the words and you see if there's any words that you don't understand, right? I highlighted a couple of the words that we're going to read in this book, or that I will be reading in the book. The first word's anemone. Okay? Does anybody know what a sea anemone is? Has anybody ever heard of that before? Okay.
Anemone, I think it's like another term for, you know how where clownfish live?
Okay.
So that's what they live in.
Yes, you're very correct. Okay, so it's actually a live it's a live plant, and it has tentacles that come out of it. Let me answer the phone because I think that's going to be the principal. Bill. Did I say it right?
Miss Gail. Yeah, this is Gail.
No, your name.
This is July.
Miss Delay. Miss Delay's classes is Miss Brown. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. I get to actually record from behind because all you guys have a sheet of paper that says that you guys can be recorded. So let me go over here and push record from behind. You don't have to look back here. The point of this is not to record you guys. The whole point of this is so that my teacher knows that I was doing my job. Where's the camera at? Okay. And we're going to do video. Okay, good. Hey, we're good to go. Okay, awesome. Since we had a little bit of a crazy start here, are you guys still tracking with me? Are we okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you for your guys' patience in getting this started. We already reviewed the fact that we're going to read this book. We talked about the fact that we're going to be discussing who, what, where, or when, where, why, and how. Okay? Those things will give you a huge piece of the book and any other text that you're reading. So if you guys look for those simple questions, you can usually do pretty well on any test that you guys are taking. And it takes some practice, right? Do we get good at things just by not practicing, or do we get good at things by practicing? Perfect. Okay, so we started to talk about some of the vocabulary words that Mr. Brown had picked out of the book, right? Some of the vocabulary that's in there is a little bit difficult, and we already asked a couple questions, but we're going to go back over it. We talked about a sea anemone, and what it is who has watched the movie Finding Nemo? Okay. Dory, is it Dory? Is that the fish's name?
Yes.
Okay.
But for the little clownfish, that's Nemo.
That's right. Okay, so you got Nemo and you got Dory as his friend, right?
Well, not just that. He's also what's the father's name again?
Does anybody remember the dad's name? Nemo?
No.
No?
He's the last person that is.
Okay. So bring it back into focus of what we're discussing here. These right here is what we're talking about. Okay, this would be an anemone, okay? And those are called clownfish. And clownfish is what you guys watch when you guys are watching that movie. So they like to hide in those areas, and they like to eat a lot of the food that kind of comes by. And I just wanted to read a couple of the definitions so that you guys have a heads up. So if you hear those words in this book, I've already discussed it with you guys, and you guys know. Go ahead.
You know that anemone, if you watch Finding Nemo, you could tell that that there's substance on the fish so they don't get stung by the anemone.
Okay. Sometimes they can have poison inside of them. That's correct. And the fish do have some type of properties that kind of keep the fish safe, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Okay. So what an anemone is, and I'm going to just read the definition that I got probably off the dictionary, is a sea animal with a bag-like body and stinging tentacles. Okay? I also noticed that the word coral is in there. Okay? Coral is a soft and hard animals that stay fixed to one place, and they live together in colonies. So it's kind of like a group. Can you see this right here? Okay, that is a group of coral is what that is. Food chain. Who's heard of a food chain before? Okay. Do you want to share what a food chain is?
Is it like, I don't know what it is. I think it's like a chain that is hooked up to me to feed sharks.
Okay. Do you want to try?
I know what the food chain is. It's what if you're high on the food chain, basically that's good, but if you're very low on the food chain, then that's bad.
You're right. Absolutely. So if you're a bear, you're kind of uncharged, right? Because you eat all the other animals. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And actually, human beings are the very tip top of the food chain. Okay? Because if you think about it, we go to the grocery store and we buy meat products. So guess who's the highest on that level? We are. So what it is, if you read the definition, is it's a diagram that shows what food animals eat. So it's kind of like everybody eats some type of food, right? So in order to have energy, we have to eat something. Some animals eat plants and some animals eat meat, right? Frenzy. Frenzy is kind of like crazy, okay? So frenzy is an act of uncontrolled and wild excitement. And I guess a good example is if you guys have ever seen piranhas. Piranhas go crazy when there's anything that drops in the water. So do sharks. If sharks know that there's blood in the water, then they might act in a frenzy. Fresh water. Fresh water is water that doesn't contain the salt found in the ocean. Gills. Do we have gills?
No.
Who has gills?
Fish.
Fish. And what is gills? What do they do? They help them breathe. Okay? They create the oxygen that they need in order to survive. Now, this is a funny word. I don't even think it's real, but I'm going to share it because it's in the book. It's noshers. Okay, noshers is referring to teeth. It's just like a silly name. Lagoon is a shallow pond-like water that's between the shore and a reef. A nursery. What's a nursery? Anybody want to share?
I don't know.
It's an area for babies. Okay?
Oh, like a nursery or nursery?
Yeah, like a nursery. So sometimes animals other than humans have nurseries too. So what happens is fish lay their eggs in an area, and that's referred to as a nursery. Until those eggs hatch, that's their nursery.
Like frogs.
Frogs do as well, yes.
Lay eggs, but the boy frog puts stuff around the eggs so it doesn't go floating everywhere.
Very good. Plankton is tiny plants and animals that drift in the water. A predator is an animal that hunts another. A reef is a ridge of rock, coral, or sand just below the ocean surface. Does anybody know what a scavenger is?
It goes hunting for food.
There you go. Okay. So it's an animal that eats dead animals. Okay, so basically if an animal's already passed on, then that animal will scavenge on those what that item is. Sometimes I think it could be a live animal too, but the definition said dead animals. So sometimes a scavenger might get on another fish and kind of ride on its back and eat some of the substances that's on that fish.
Fish could be cannibalism because fish eat each other.
Sometimes they do. Not always though. A school, does anybody know what a school is? And I don't mean what you're doing right now. Okay.
A school is this place.
Okay. That's correct, but there's sometimes more than one definition to a word.
A school, like a school of fish.
Very good. That's what I'm getting at. Okay. So has anybody ever heard of a school of fish?
Is it like a school for fish?
It's a whole bunch of fish all in one is what it is. So it's like a big group of them.
100?
Like 100 or maybe even 1,000. Who knows? We've got seagrass, which is leafy plants that can flower underwater and provide food, water for the sea animals. As we already discussed, sometimes your fish need to eat, and so does all the plants. Plants need food too. We've got sensors, which is a way of receiving signals. Sensors could be like a feel or a touch, or sometimes hearing or a vibration might do that. Species. Does anybody know about species? Go ahead.
For animals.
It's a type of animal, right? So we belong to what?
Humans.
We're mammals. That's right. What?
Species are different
It's a
types.
group.
It's a different group of animals, like the cat species.
There you go. That's very good. Okay. Tentacles. Tentacles are like arms. Sometimes tentacles reach out and they grab food, right? Tropical. Who knows an area that would be considered tropical?
Tropical island.
There you go. Okay. Usually the weather is warm and the temperature's kind of high. And then vibration. If you ever watch these right here, the ocean sometimes moves with the waves. And as the ocean moves and those waves go along, they kind of vibrate with that water. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and read the book. This book right here is called Shark Reef. And it's by Nikki Foreman. Okay? I also like to read the back of the book. That's always a good idea because sometimes it gives us key words or ideas. It tells us a little bit about the book. But I think we know what this book's going to be about, right? What is this called?
Shark Reef.
Does anybody know what this part of the book is called?
I know.
What?
It's like
You have one of these in your back.
Oh, a spine.
You got it. Very good. Okay. I will try to run through this very quickly. It's quite a few pages, but that's okay. So the reef sharks. Just beneath the ocean waves, a colorful coral reef bubbled with life. A school of bright blue surgeonfish swam by. The orange and white stripes of a clownfish disappeared into a spiky anemone. A sea slug slithered along the ocean floor. A lobster scuttled by. It stopped. A pair of eyes looked out from an underwater cave. They were locked on the lobster in a flurry of bubbles and teeth. The lobster was gone. The long, slender body of a young, white-tip reef shark swam away. Blanche, I'm kind of mentioning that word. I want you guys to remember Blanche. The white-tip reef shark was looking for food in the coral reef. Nothing got in her way once she spied something she wanted. Over there, an octopus. Blanche plunged after it between the coral. She almost had it, but something was behind her. She spun around, and the octopus vanished into a deep crack. You, Blanche snapped. It was Ash, the gray reef shark. You made me lose my dinner. Would you guys be happy if you lost your dinner?
No.
Oh, what was it? Ash asked. It was mine, shouted Blanche. I wouldn't be so sure about that, a voice spoke. I like a bit of octopus myself. A large shark with a hammer-shaped head appeared out of nowhere. It circled the coral. The beady eyes on each side of its hammerhead watched for any sign of the octopus. I'm Harry. Pleased to meet you. Pleased to meet you both, this stranger said. Ash stared. What happened to your head? He asked. My head's special, Harry explained. It gives me 360-degree vision, which means I can see everything. Not quite everything, something nearby said. Suddenly, the coral on the seafloor moved, except it wasn't coral. It was a fish. Oh, hi, Moby, said Blanche. We didn't see you there. Well, that is the point, Moby said grumpily. His long beard of tassels quivered like anemone tentacles. I'm camouflaged on the reef floor. Moby, meet Harry, said Blanche. Harry, this is Moby. Moby, this is a wobbegong. What kind of fish is a wobbegong? Asked Harry. It's a shark, just like you, Moby replied, and smiled a big, toothy grin to prove it. killer bite. A large shape loomed in the ocean, in the deep ocean. Hey, what's that out there? Ash wondered. Let's take a closer look, suggested Harry. Ash, Blanche, Harry, and Moby swam to the reef's edge. Then the drop-off, where the seafloor plunged down into the deep sea. The large shape swam near the surface through the shards of light from the sun's rays. The creature's gaping mouth was open wide. Water rushed into the vast darkness inside. It's a whale shark, gasped Moby. This is kind of important just to point out to you guys when you see the little like blue informational texts. Sometimes the people who do the test, they will ask questions based on this stuff too. So you guys can't just concentrate on the reading, you have to concentrate on what's inside these little textbooks. So it says types of sharks, there are about 375 species, which can be sorted by their features such as the number of gill slits and fins and mouth positions. So how many different types of sharks are there? 375. 375. So is it a whale or is it a shark? Asked Blanche. It's a shark, answered Moby. And it's the biggest fish in the ocean. It swims around with its mouth wide open and filters the water for a tiny plankton to krill. But why? Asked Ash. Because that's what it eats, Moby replied. But how can a huge fish like that survive on a teeny tiny plankton? Wondered Harry. Because it eats well loads of them, explained Moby. Ash started swimming around with his mouth open wide. Ash, what are you doing? Blanche asked. I thought I'd try the whale shark's trick, Ash replied. See if food will swim into my mouth. Blanche rolled her eyes. But don't you love the hunt? She asked. We're made to hunt. Look at me. I have a blunt snout, protective eye flaps, and tough skin to bash through all that coral without getting hurt. Not to mention my sharp teeth for a killer bite. Nothing can get in my way except me, Ash laughed. I love the hunt too, Harry burst out. My favorite meal is stingray. They hide on the seafloor. In my nose are tiny sensors that can feel any movement from other fish, even if I can't see them. So when I sense a hiding stingray, I use my hammerhead to pin it down and then bite off its wings. I have those same sensors in my nose, Ash exclaimed. I love hunting with my buddies. We corner schools of snapper against the reef wall. That way they have nowhere to escape. And then we charge in and feast. That all sounds like far too much effort to me, Moby said. My clever markings and tassels allow me to stay unseen on the sea floor amongst the coral. Fish come up to me all the time and don't have a clue that I'm there. Moby chuckled. So when a fish gets close, that's when I strike. I suck it into my mouth and eat it alive using my sharp fang-like teeth. But enough talk about food. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it, he grumbled. And this definition here says sensory pores. It says sharks have an extra sense on their snouts. They have pores that pick up the weak electrical signals that all living things give out, even if they're hiding in the sandy seabed. Speedy swimmers. Do you guys think sharks are fast or slow?
Fast.
Okay. A blur of fins, tail, and teeth speed towards the four sharks. It appeared out of nowhere. Howdy, guys. the blur said, swimming back and forth. Fin's the name and speed's the game. I'm a short fin mako. The fastest shark in these here waters. In any waters, actually. Do you guys live here? I stay on the move myself. All through the great blue. I swim and swim and swim. Ash gaped in awe at the chatty visitor. You've really been out there in the deep ocean, he asked. Sure have, Finn talked. As far as he swam, he checked the 4 reef sharks with his large round eyes. His mouth was set into a grin, and long curvy teeth stuck out every which way. You should see the things I've seen. There's some weird stuff out there. There are small sharks with see-through skin that bite cookie-shaped holes into their prey. There are fish that fish for other fish with bait that looks like tasty food. There are squid that talk to each other. They light up the water with amazing displays, but I'm still learning squid speak. Sound, sight, and smells. Sharks have excellent sight even in dim light, and some see in color too. They can pick up sounds and smells that are nearly a mile away. By moving their heads, they can find the direction that they are coming from. Finn, will you stay still? Blanche cried out. You're making me dizzy. No can do, lady. Finn replied, if I stop swimming, I die. You see, I have weak gills. So if I stop moving, not enough water passes through my gills, and I stop breathing. Which means lights out for Finn. But don't you ever get tired? Asked Harry. Never. I'm not the fastest shark in the sea for nothing. You're really the fastest shark? Asked Ash. Prove it. Sure thing, said Finn. Let's have a race. Finn set up a racetrack around the reef. The sharks lined up on the starting line. Raring to go. A balloon blowfish released a shot of bubbles, and the race was on. Finn was quick off the starting line. The others were hot on his tail, around the lagoon and through the turtle nursery. But then Finn sped away and through the seawood finish line. Victory is mine, he shouted, but didn't stop. The others crossed the finish line, but Finn was just a speck in the distant blue. Diving encounters. Do you think that sharks ever have problems with people? Do you think that sometimes people go into the shark's environment? You don't think people go swimming and sometimes there's sharks that are there?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think that enough excitement for one day, Moby said. The 4 sharks turned on their tails and swam back to the shallow reef, the waters of the reef. All of a sudden, Harry's nonsense started twitching as vibrations from a loud noise hit them. A large speedboat zoomed past overhead. It stopped right above Moby's favorite resting spot. 6 divers plunged into the water. Typical, Moby moaned. Just when I wanted a bit of peace, more visitors. What are they? Wondered Ash, staring at the visitors. Whatever they are, they can stay out or over there. Blanche said, I'll mind my own business if they mind theirs. Just then, the divers started swimming deeper into the reef, closer to the sharks. Ash hunched into an S shape. Ash, what are you doing? Asked Harry. They're making me nervous, explained Ash. This is my warning display. If they come any closer, those creatures might get hurt. It's not working, Ash. They're getting closer, said Harry. Don't worry, guys, Blanche soothed. Look how weak and slow they are. If they attack, will outswim them easily. And look at their mouths, said Moby. There are no sharp noshers, remember that word? Teeth in there to worry about. They should be scared of us. The divers and the sharks hovered in the water, watching each other's every move. A diver pointed at something, but the sudden movement surprised Ash. He panicked and swam into a group of divers. Then he saw what the diver was pointing at. Snapper, Ash shouted. His powerful tail propelled him into the large school. The slippery snapper panicked under the attack. Ash was excited. 1 snapper, 2 snapper, 3 snapper. Do you guys know what snappers are? They're fish. He counted as he ate greedily. He's not having all those himself, exclaimed Blanche. And she followed him into the fishy fold. All the bubbles, blood, and noise attracted other sharks of the reef. They appeared from every direction. It was a feeding frenzy. But wait, what was that noise? The mother boat had started up again. The latest visitors were leaving the reef. I don't see the clock in here. The deadly predator. Sharks and snappers scattered as the boat sped away. A lonely flipper drifted down, down, down. Ash and Blanche followed it. It landed on the coral, except for it wasn't coral, it was Moby. Can't a wobble or wobgong get a moment's peace? Moby shouted. Ash watched the boat disappear in the distance. I'm glad that they're gone. They made me nervous. Moby chuckled. I think you guys made them nervous too. Moby cut off as he looked out to the drop off. What was there made? The 4 sharks freeze in terror. A heavy shark powered towards the reef. Blanche, Ash, Harry, and Moby caught sight of the telltale stripes on its back. It's a tiger shark, whispered Blanche. She was shaking with fear. I've heard that tiger sharks eat white-tip reef sharks, she said. Stop, absolutely still, replied Moby. Let's not find out. I heard about one brave white-tip who stood up to a tiger shark once, said Harry. Really? Blanche asked in hope. What happened? The white-tip was never seen again, he replied. Blanche gulped. Who knows who the main shark is that it's talking about? Can anybody figure that out? We talked about Moby and Blanche.
Finn.
There's Finn.
Harry.
Harry.